All right, well, welcome everyone to tonight's APR online study course. I'm Michelle Martin, your host facilitator, and tonight we're going to continue to talk about RPI. And as I mentioned, it's 30% on the APR exam, so it's very important to understand it. So last week we talked about one part of the RPI process. We talked about setting goals and objectives. And this week we are moving into strategies, tactics, and evaluation. And speaking of evaluation, that's the E in RPI, go into chat and tell us what are some effective ways to evaluate a communication plan? So how should you evaluate a communication plan? So go ahead, put your thoughts in chat and let's see. Someone said survey. Okay, what other ways can you evaluate a communication plan? How else do you do that? Compared to objectives. Okay, good. Objectives, yes. How else? Measure against objectives, metrics. Objectives versus outcomes. Okay, good. Good. Yes. So, and let's see, KPIs, objectives matching strategies, outcomes. Okay, yes, absolutely. You can look at your objectives. So you ask yourself, what did you set out to do? And remember, in this class, we always say objectives are who does what by when and how much. And that helps you evaluate whether you're successful. And there are different types of objectives. And somebody mentioned in chat outcomes, and that outcome objectives are what you strive for. So what are the outcomes of what you did? Not those outputs, but the outcomes. And so then ask yourself, was it a change in knowledge, a change in behavior, a change in opinion? And those are all good ways to evaluate whether your plan was successful. So RPI, again, 30% on the APR exam tonight. Again, we're looking at strategies, tactics, the evaluation process. And you probably already know what tactics are, but strategies are those things that people sometimes confuse with objectives. So strategies are how you will accomplish your objectives. And again, objectives are, like we said last week, who does what by when and by how much. And your tactics come from your strategy. So tonight we're going to talk more about the format for communication planning, what you should prepare for when you do your panel presentation. So we'll be walking through that. And then we'll talk more about how you evaluate whether your plan was successful, because that's that E in RPI. We don't have module notes tonight, so we're going to have hopefully some additional time for questions tonight. So if you have any questions throughout the class, go ahead, put them in chat, and our facilitators will get to them. We'll be sure to answer them. And any questions. So questions about the exam, about RPI in general, the panel presentation, the questionnaire, any of those things. If you have a question, please go ahead and ask, and our facilitators will be happy to answer them. And so speaking of facilitators, I want to introduce you tonight to two APRs who will share their knowledge and insights. So thank you, April and Tammy, for joining us. And April, I'd like to start with you. So would you please start, share a little bit about your APR experience, your journey in getting there, and anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I received my APR in November 2019. I always remember that because a few months later, the world changed forever. But I did do my APR through a boot camp. I went to Ohio and did the 3-day boot camp. Happy to discuss that a little bit further. But I will say it took me probably 2.5, 3 years for the entire process. And not that it takes that long, but I took this course a few times, and listening to these sessions and these notes helps it sink in a lot more. I will also say I teach communication, and my college gave me a course, Intro to PR, and this was our textbook by Tom Keller. It's one of the books that's in your study guide, I believe, as a suggestion. And I always say when you study for this exam, for this process, if you can attack it as you have to teach it, it will definitely sink in. So I knew I was ready when I had to teach this course, because the APR, literally, this textbook helps walk you through it. So I think it's a great study tool. And yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us again. And Tammy, I'd like to give you a chance to introduce yourself and tell us about your APR experience and anything you'd like to share with the class.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tammy Battaglia. I got my APR in 2023, a couple years ago. I do healthcare, public relations. I've been doing that for about 10 years, but I never went to school for PR. I was a journalist. I worked at the Detroit Free Press for a good bulk of my career and then made the switch into healthcare PR. And I thought I needed to do something to kind of um, set kind of a framework for my understanding of good PR and the good practice of PR, the way to do it right, basically. So it took me about a year. We're in Michigan. I live near Michelle. In the winter, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna buckle down this winter. I did this course, which was very, very helpful. And yeah, and studied. There were a couple weekends that all I did was study for the APR. But ended up doing it, and this class is very helpful. So are the flashcards that you find online when you're studying to take the test. And having an APR mentor was very helpful for me too. I did a mock presentation with my mentor, and we realized my sound was not working on my computer, and would not. There's were a bunch of glitches that I was able to take care of before the actual presentation. And just trying to, bouncing things off of my APR mentors was very, very helpful. I had another that went through my presentation, the written questionnaire, and pointed out things that were lacking in the questionnaire and things that I needed to address. So finding a couple of good advisors through the process is very helpful. So,
All right. Well, thank you. And tonight we are going to move on to the scenario practice questions, and we have four tonight. The first one was written by Sue, and then also Victor, Marcus, and Jillian will be reading the other ones. And when just a few things to remind us about when you hear the question, you listen to the question, ask yourself, what would the APR study guide say? What would the APR study guide say? What would it tell you to do for that KSA? And in this case, we are focused on RPIs. So we're looking at the KSAs for RPIs. Think about the key words. What is it really asking? And really, really important is think about what the best answer is, because they all can be good answers, but you need to find the best answer or the best answers. And I know I've shared this in the past, but I think it's so important to share again. When I was working on my APR a few years ago, I told someone who I used to work with, and actually we had worked together twice previously at different agencies. I told her that I was thinking about getting an APR. And she said to me, she said, Michelle, you're never going to get it. You've been working way too long. There are too many shades of gray. And obviously she was wrong, I got it. But in one way, she had a point. And that's because when you're taking the exam, you need to put yourself in that APR mindset. And you approach every question as you would do it as an APR. So you ask yourself, what would the study guide tell you to do? Um, Remind yourself you have, the support of your leaders, you have the right resources, you have all of those things. So don't let yourself think, oh, well, that scenario couldn't happen, because it wouldn't happen in, anywhere I've worked. So don't let those experiences cloud your judgment. So you always want to think of yourself as, think of yourself as that APR when you're taking the exam. So again, listen to the scenario, ask yourself what that KSA is, think about best practices, and again, what would the study guide say? What would your textbooks say? And think about the format of the question. So keep all those things in mind. And Sue is going to go to the first question. So Sue, when you're ready, let us know.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. You are the information officer for Regional Council of Governments whose region is in danger of failing to meet federal air quality standards because of increases in ground level ozone, a key air pollutant. Federal studies show exhaust from vehicles is one of the key chemicals that combine to form ground level ozone or smog. Your agency wants to start an air quality awareness program to educate residents on the issue and encourage changes in their driving habits to help improve air quality. What strategies could you employ as part of the program? Issue news releases to the media when the air quality forecast is in the unhealthy category established by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, establish partnerships with schools and universities, increase traffic to the agency air quality website by 20% from May through August, key months in the ozone season, reduce ground level ozone concentrations in the region, or collaborate with public health and government officials.
Okay, so put in chat, we're looking for 2 answers. What 2 strategies could you employ as part of the program? And I am seeing overwhelmingly B and E in chat. So let's see what the correct answer is. Yep, B and E is correct. And Sue, please read us the rationale.
Okay, so the correct answers are B and E. A is a tactic, C is an objective, and D is a goal. So this falls under KSA 1.5 planning and programming. Source APR study guide, page 25. Strategies provide the roadmap to your objectives. Strategies describe how to reach your objectives. And under Cutlip and Center's effective public relations, page 273. In public relations practice, strategy typically refers to the overall concept, approach, or general plan for the program designed to achieve an objective.
Okay. All right. So we're going to hear from our facilitators. So April and Tammy, we want to hear what you think about this question. Is this something that you think you would see on the exam? And if it is, how would you approach it? So I'd like to start with Tammy.
So I put in the chat before you read the question, look for keywords in the questions. And when you're in the test scenario, when you read through the questions, if something pops out like, what is the strategy? What is the objective? That's what they're trying to test you on. So look for those keywords and then evaluate the answers to the question based on what you think would be the best. In this situation, it was the best 2 answers. This was a typical question, I think, from the test.
Yeah, I agree,
Okay.
Tammy. And great question too. I thought it was a very straightforward question. I don't believe this to be a gotcha test. To Tammy's point, really understanding, and I see Joy dropped in the chat like what a strategy is, what a goal is, what an objective is. And of course, the questions, like any test, there's lots of fluff around that question, but zoning in on what it's asking you what were the top 2 strategies, the B and E really jumped out. So good question.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And we are going to go to the next question, and Victor is going to read it. Victor, are you still on?
I'm here.
Okay, great. All right. When you're ready.
Hey, you are the Director of Communications for the largest private school association in the country. Over the last decade, your membership numbers have been in steady decline, with many larger schools leaving to join a competitor. Your CEO has had conversations with several former large school members and believes the decline is largely due to the perception that your association no longer offers cutting-edge professional development opportunities. As a result, the CEO tasked the professional development department to identify new offerings to retain existing members and attract new ones. The CEO wants you to develop a communication plan to announce these new offerings ahead of your association's annual membership renewal drive, which begins in 120 days. What are the first steps you will take to formulate your communications plan? Choose 2. A, outline your publics and begin to build a plan targeting each public with different messaging. B, build an email campaign directed at current and former large school members and invite them to review the new professional development opportunities. C, outline different research options for members regardless of category to determine what could be causing the downturn in membership renewal. And D, research member exit interviews and membership renewal trends over the past 10 years.
Okay, so you have 2, there's 2 for this one as well. What are the 2, which of these 2 are the correct answer? And again, they may all be the right answer or the correct answer, but there's only 2 best answers. And I'm looking in let's see, I'm looking in chat. I'm seeing a lot of C and Ds. I saw also a D and yeah, A and D, a few of those in there. So what are C and D, A and D? Okay, so it looks like we're about equal on those. So let's see what the correct answer is. It looks like the correct answer is C and D. And so now for the rationale.
Sorry. Start at the beginning. Don't rush to solutions or jump into tactics before you've done adequate research to analyze the situation, define the business problem, determine key publics, and set measurable objectives. By beginning with research, you reduce uncertainty in later decision making. Always start with defining the problem and researching who you want to reach, what you want them to do, and what messages you want to communicate. C&D are foundational research elements. While you are aware there's a problem with membership renewal, you do not know what is causing the decline. You need to do more work to determine why membership has declined so you can develop a strategic plan. A and B are tactical and assumes, based on the input provided by the CEO, that you can skip the foundational research as he assumes he understands the problem. Note, although the CEO had conversations with some larger school members, there's no indication he had representative feedback from the entirety of members.
Okay, well, there's a lot here to this rationale, so a lot to talk about. So April, I'd like to start with you. Tell me your thoughts on this and how you'd approach it.
Yeah, I think this is a great question, Victor. I was smiling as I was reading it because this is so real life example. The boss has jumped to a conclusion and thinks they know the answer. And as the APR, as the senior PR person in the group, it's your job to say, wait a minute, let's find out why this is happening, as opposed to jumping to tactics. I saw a lot of A's in the chat, and the answer is we don't know why this is happening yet. So let's start at the drawing board. So the two things that say research, as we all know, the acronym is RPI. We start at RPI, at research. Doing the research to figure out what the problem is will then get us to the steps of being able to do the outline and being able to do the messaging and the other things. But we always start with research. So very, very good answer, Victor. Very, very good question, excuse me.
Okay, all right, thank you. Tammy, what are your thoughts? You're muted.
Unmute there. I think this was a great question. You know, this points out that research is so fundamental to forming a PR plan. From experience, it's also the hardest thing to get your, or in my experience, to have your organization pause and do, because people are so focused on outcomes and output that taking the time at the beginning to do the research is often overlooked. And so as a PR practitioner, it's always great to kind of point this out, you know, help things start with the research. So this question, I think, really was a foundational example of that.
All right, well, thank you. And we have 2 more questions today. And the next one, Marcus will be reading. So Marcus, let me know when you're ready.
All right. You are the recently appointed Public Relations Community Outreach Coordinator for a mid-sized regional occupational center in an urban area. The school offers adult-level classes such as nursing, welding, and computer repair. Enrollment at the center has been going down steadily for the past 2 semesters. The director of the program has requested that you develop a public relations plan to increase enrollment. Choose one strategy that will support the goal. Student enrollment will increase by 20% by the first 8 weeks of the program. B, cultivate third-party endorsements. C, schedule an open house on the second week of school. D, to be the most widely recognized regional occupational in the state.
Okay, all right. Put your answers in chat. I see all B's in chat. Anything besides B? I know everybody seems to agree it is B, and I am pretty sure they're correct. And it is B, so let's talk about this. This is an interesting slide because I feel on this slide we have one of everything. So Tammy, starting with you, tell us about oh, I'm sorry, I jumped over here. I'm sorry, I missed Marcus. I'm sorry. Go ahead and read the rationale.
The correct answer is B. A is an objective, C is a tactic, D involves a goal. APR Study Guide, page 46, number 4. In public relations planning, strategy explains how you will approach the challenge of working toward your objective. In effective public relations, Cutlip and Sinner's Strategies and Tactics, page 273. Strategy typically refers to the overall concept, approach, or general plan for the program designed to achieve an objective.
All right. Well, thank you for reading that. And now, Tammy, tell us your thoughts on this and any tips if you were to see this on the exam or any other thoughts related to it. You're muted.
Sorry about that. So when I was going through the slides to prepare for the class tonight, that B and D, the cultivate third-party endorsements, and D to be the most widely recognized regional occupational school in the state. So I thought those were kind of close. But if you really boil it down, what's going to be effective in your campaign? You can be the most widely recognized regional occupational school in the state, but that's not going to get you to your goal. So you really have to analyze these using the parameters of RPI. So cultivate third-party endorsements. And you guys seem like you're on it. So everybody gets putting B in the chat. That was exciting to see.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And April, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with Tammy. And much like one of the previous questions, just really understanding the difference between all of these. And like any test, we start, if you're not sure, you start eliminating things. I think it was A, when you start getting into specifics of percentages and timelines, you're into an objective. I believe one of them was a very, very lofty, it sounded like a goal, it's a goal. You could at least off the bat eliminate like 2 of these and get it down to, wow, what's the strategy? So definitely as you're doing a test, just crossing off things that you know are wrong will help get you down to the right answer.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And we have one more, and Jillian will read our last question. So Jillian, let us know when you're ready.
Good evening. Okay, question number 4. Your corporate communications leader and your employer is considering a change to the company's healthcare benefits in an attempt to reduce cost, but continue providing a competitive benefits package to attract and retain talent. Anecdotal research indicates that employees may not understand their healthcare benefits, and as a result, many select the wrong plan, resulting in added costs for the company and the employee. Employees are dissatisfied, and the company may be losing good workers. How do you begin a plan to improve employee understanding of the health plan options? Choose 2. A, create a video that educates employees on their healthcare benefits. B, conduct a survey of employees' attitudes toward their benefits. C, conduct a series of lunch and learns featuring healthcare insurance vendors. D, conduct content analysis of employee benefits to identify common issues precluding employees from selecting the right plan. Or E, segment the workforce to determine where the largest attrition rate occurs.
Okay, everyone go and chat and tell us which of these two that you would, which of these two would you choose to improve employee understanding of the healthcare health plan options? And I'm seeing in chat B and D, I'm seeing B and E. Let's see, B and D. Looks like most people put B and D in there. So let's see what the correct answer is. It's B and D. And Jillian, please read the rationale.
Okay, so the rationale, B and D are correct because they seek research to better identify and define the problem. A and C are not correct because they skip to taking action before first defining the problem. And E is not the best answer, although it could be part of the research phase.
Okay, all right. So I'd like to hear from our facilitators on this. So tell us your thoughts on the rationale. Tell us your thoughts on the question. April, starting with you.
Sure. Jillian, I thought it was a great question. As you're reading this question, the red flags start to jump out. Like, we have some anecdotal, talking amongst employees, and we kind of think we know what the problem is. So that tells us that red flag, we need research. And, I love the options that you had. Obviously, we can't go make an employee video until we understand the employee's concerns, right? And we can't go off and bring in, vendors until we actually understand what the vendor need to tell the employees. So the idea is that we need to, do content analysis, or we need to survey these employees to get down to the exact root of the issue. Like, this is the science behind what we do. Then we can, from that information, take it and go off and do the strategy and tactics and other things to help solve the problem. But great question.
Okay. All right, thank you. Tammy, what are your thoughts?
I was gonna almost identically share the same thing, April. The word anecdotal research in the question really throws up, like she said, the red flag. So when you see things like that, that can tell you where to start, because you know that you're just not going to base a PR campaign on anecdotal research. So the segment the workforce to determine where the largest attrition rate occurs. That one kind of threw me for a loop too. But then when I went back and looked at conduct a survey, conduct content analysis, those terms used in the answer in that format showed more so that that is following the KSAs. So that helps.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to our facilitators. Thank you to those of you who read the questions tonight. It's just a reminder, we don't have module notes tonight, and we don't have a formal panel presentation. So if we probably will have time to get to any questions that you might have that maybe are related to RPI, maybe are related to just the APR process. So if you have those questions, please put them in chat and we will get to them tonight, and we'll answer them for you. So if there's anything that you've been wondering that you'd like to know more about for any of this, please put those in chat and we will answer them today. So before we get there, I want to, we talked about the slide last week, and I know I walked through it, so I don't want to go through it in too much detail again this week. But this is the RPI process. So last week we were focusing on more along the lines of most of the right side of this slide. Tonight we're more on the left side of it, but the important thing that we remember that when we talk about RPI, I said RPI is a continuous circle. So yes, it should start with research. Always start with research. Define your problem, do your situation analysis, and then from there, that's when you go into your planning process. And that's where you build those strategies and those objectives, and then you implement them. And you go through that process, you implement your plan, and then the important part is you get to the end of it, you get to the E part of it, the evaluation, and then you ask yourself, was I successful? Did I meet my objectives? If I met my objectives, that's great. If I didn't meet my objectives, you can go back in. You can go back into that circle and you can do some more research and you can adjust things. And then you can go implement, go back, evaluate again. It's this continuous circle. And that's why you can keep going, keep adjusting. And that's really the exciting part about RPI. And then in just a few moments, we are going to walk through the 10-step PR plan, which I know we talked a little bit about last week. But what I'm going to, the slides I'm going to put up here are they're actually the template that Michael will give you if you're ready to present in this class, whether it's a practice panel presentation or a case presentation. And I know that's something when I took the course I did. I'm not sure if April did or Tammy did, but we are going to we'll walk through these slides and then share maybe some of our experiences and such. And we have a couple questions in chat, and so we will get to those. Actually, we'll get to those in just a little bit after we walk through some of this. So Okay,
I'd like to go back to the RPI part.
You wanna go back to our
Yeah.
part?
Yeah, I just want to, one thing that really helped me in the PR process and learning this, I had no clue about this before I started the APR process, was the measurable objectives and measurable, having something to evaluate at the end of a campaign. And I think we all as communicators intuitively know or think we know what we need to do to accomplish our goals, but to have measurable, um, you know, uh, start and measurable end, that really elevates your PR process. So just throwing that in there.
I agree. Actually, we do have a couple questions in chat. Maybe if you guys don't mind talking through some of them. One of them is, the question is, I'm concerned I don't have a large enough project under my belt to fill a 90-minute presentation. I have broad experience, but in my role, I am largely on the execution end of things. Has anyone had experience in this situation? And do you have any advice on how to approach the presentation? So I think this is a really good question. I know Tammy and I actually were on a panel. We were panelists together over the summer. So we have some experience being on panels. April, you probably have as well. Do either of you want to jump in and address this question?
So a friend that just passed her panel that I was helping kind of mentor through that, she has an independent PR agency. She's basically a one-man band. And she did her panel presentation on, um, she proposed a program for the synagogue she was involved with and how to increase membership. And they didn't, she put together the proposal for them, and she had all the aspects of a PR plan, the RPI process, everything, and they didn't really execute the plan. So she was worried that she didn't have enough too, kind of the same scenario. So what she did was she talked about, had they done this, this is what they were looking for. Had they done this, this is what they were looking for. They did do this. This was the outcome. This is what, if we would have done everything together, I think would have happened. So part of the presentation process, some people do a presentation not on something that they've executed in the past. Um, they bring up a project and they go through it. Michelle, you've heard of this too, where you don't have an actual project that you feel would be appropriate for a panel presentation, but you talk about a specific, a plan and what you would do, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple thoughts. One is I'm thinking of, actually, Tammy and I did a webinar together about a year and a half ago, right? Early last year. And one of the people who was on the webinar with us, if I remember right, she was more so focused on one like smaller area, but she still did that on her panel presentation. And she also, if I remember right, we'll have to rewatch the webinar now because now I'm forgetting. But I thought she was saying that she did her panel presentation as she was working on as she was working on that project, if I remember correctly. So just because you're more executing those projects doesn't mean that right now you could always, start to put together that plan, do that research, follow the RPI process. And, and you might end up, as you do it, you might, or you likely will end up with a different maybe outcome of what tactics you would be using. Another important thing that, just to remind you, with any of us who have done our panel presentations, when we're doing them, they're not perfect. So the people on your panel will say to you, what would you have done differently? Or, the objectives that you wrote at that time might not even be I mean, I hate to say it, they might not be even the greatest objectives, but what they're looking for is for you to say, you know what, I understand I should have, you know, the objective should have been written this way, or this, I said this was a strategy, but it's not, or I would have used different strategies. So those are all things, that's what your, the people on the panel are looking for. So that's something, you know, to keep in mind, you know, with maybe some of the work that you're currently doing. April, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. No, I agree with both of you. And I was going to say, Sharon, remember, according to your study guide, this whole thing is about 2 hours. So you're allotting about, 30 minutes to an hour for you to go through this and to go through all 10 of these steps takes a little bit of time. And the rest of it is for them to ask you questions, for you to show your expertise. And, I have found my presentation that I did, plus the people that presented to me, I also do the APR panels, are very conversational. Everyone's very nice. They're rooting for you. So I know it's very nerve-wracking to go in there and say, oh my God, I have to talk for 2 hours. You don't. They ask questions. Maybe they have questions about your plan, what you're presenting. I wouldn't be overly concerned about having to think of 90 minutes or 2 hours about how to present. It's probably going to be more like 30, 40 minutes, and they're going to ask you questions after that.
Yeah, it's very conversational. And
And you can,
go ahead.
and Sharon, when you're saying you're on the execution end, you can talk about the planning part of things in a project like that you're involved in. The end, if you're just doing a section of it, you can talk about the other parts of the project and what was done, what you think should have been done. But just, be forthright with the panel that you didn't do this part, but this is what was done. This is what you think about it. This is how it applied, how it met the parameters of a PR plan, and kind of fill it out that way.
Because you want to be able, whether you did the research yourself, whether you did the planning yourself, you want to be able to demonstrate that you understand those things. And in some cases with some of the research, for example, what I did my panel presentation on, the majority of that research was not research that I did. That was research that actually, for example, because it was on it was a statewide campaign we did for the US Census. That research was done by the US Census Bureau. I mean, that research guided our plan, but it wasn't, so that was one part of it that I hands-on didn't do. Maybe a tiny bit of research, but not obviously the whole amount of it. There's a question also in chat that someone wanted to ask April more about the boot camp.
Sure.
Good
I thought
question.
the boot camp was a great experience. Again, I always reiterate, it's not a crash course in getting the APR. Everything that you need to do beforehand. I think sometimes there's a misnomer, like I can go do it in 3 days. You definitely want to be prepared and study before you go. But it's a 3-day process. Mine was Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesday, they start out with a little bit of prep, getting you comfortable and ready to go. In the afternoon, I did my panel presentation. So it's one of the first things you knock out of the way. And it actually, getting through the panel presentation dictates the rest of your time there. If something went awful, which it wouldn't, that you didn't get through the panel presentation, there really is no need to continue the rest of the weekend. So they do that first. Then on Thursday, they did do a little crash course for us just in studying and preparing. By Thursday, they will have told you that on Wednesday, before end of day, if you passed your panel presentation. And they're preparing you for the exam on Friday. And then on Friday, we did a little prep in the morning. And Friday, we went ahead and took our exam at depending on where you go, a computer based place, wherever city you're in. I was in Springfield, Ohio. So it is, and of course, by the time you end the exam with the computer exam, you know if you pass that or not. So it is everything that happens in the APR process. It just happens in a condensed 3-day period. And I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed it. The people that ran my APR boot camp were just so friendly and nice. And it was nice actually to be with other people. There might have been about 15 of us that were all going through it together. And being able to share that experience together was great.
That's good information. One thing about the boot camp, I did it as well. I did it online, and I didn't take the exam until weeks later, and I didn't do my panel until weeks later. But the one thing about the boot camp is intended for people who are at that very end stage of getting ready to get their APR. So if you are relatively new, don't do the boot camp until you're right there where you're just about ready. Because like April said, in her case, she took the exam right then and there. So you really want to be sure that you're ready for it. Somebody had a question in chat about what's the process of scheduling your panel presentation. And I will tell you, because this is funny, I'm the APR chair for my chapter, and this actually just came up today because I'm learning as I go along. So you go online, if you're a member of PRSA, you go online and you apply for the APR. And then you submit a questionnaire, and then that questionnaire goes to your chapter. And then once your chapter has that questionnaire in hand, then they will send out a request for volunteers to be panelists. And then from there, usually about 15 days later or so is when you do your panel presentation, because the panelists need that time to be able to read your questionnaire, because that's another part of when you're doing your panel presentation that they take into consideration, because there's a rubric and there are things on there that ask specifically about the questionnaire. So I don't know if Tammy or April, if you'd like to add anything to that, or if there's any steps in the process I might have not mentioned.
The questionnaire really will help you organize how you approached your PR campaign and how you're presenting it to the panel. So once you go through the questionnaire, mine ended up being, I think, about 10 pages. Michelle, I think yours was a lot longer. And I highly recommend, that was where I had one of my APR mentors go over. They read through my questionnaire. One mentor was a retired electric company executive, did PR for years and years. And he had some really good input on what I was missing in my questionnaire that helped me overall organize and meet what I needed to accomplish in my panel presentation to show the panel that I knew what I was doing. So he found some holes in that. So
Yeah. I enjoyed writing the questionnaire because I felt like part of it was this like reflection piece, and some of the questions made me look back and reflect on some of the things that I had done. So I really enjoyed it. Yes, and Tammy's right. Mine was very long, but I enjoyed all of it. There is a question in chat. Since those on the panel will have the document detailing the project, how closely should the visual element follow it? I've heard a few different things, that the slide deck / PowerPoint should have all of your visual examples and charts, graphs, and others say it should be more like a simple outline of the main highlights of your document. So, April and Tammy, what are your experiences and your thoughts on this?
I'll start out. I've heard different things too. I'm in the DC area, and my mentor in the National Capital chapter, if he had more than 5 slides, she's like, forget it. Like no. Like the fact that so it's interesting, the different schools of thought. And she was over our APR process in our chapter. I definitely am of the school of thought. I did not have everything on mine. I had key things to help me guide through the presentation. So I would love to hear from the other facilitators their thoughts, but the idea that every single thing should be on there, because remember, these people have your questionnaire, they've read through it. You're now, I don't ever give a presentation and put everything on the slide. I feel that it's a lot, but I'm interested. I've heard both schools of thoughts as well. I did not put everything on mine. I put bullets to help guide my conversation.
Tammy, what about you?
Unmute here. So I used my slides. So my presentation was on, I was at a health system and we had done the first double lung transplant for a boy who had damaged his lungs due to vaping. And so it ended up being kind of an international story. And I used the panel presentation slides. I did quite a few of them. I had, I think, maybe 15 or 20. And what I did was include in that just like, here's the press release, and I didn't like read through the press release. I just talked about kind of a timeline of how everything unfolded, because they knew everything that had happened from the questionnaire. But I talked about kind of the interesting highlights of how all that rolled out. And I had pictures like when I got the call from the doctors that they were bringing the boy over, I had from another hospital, like I had a picture of um, actually the boy being wheeled into the hospital. Just things like that that kind of highlighted the presentation and what I was dealing with. I also included pictures from the press conferences that we had, some of the name media personalities that were there, and just kind of some overall pictures. I also had some pictures of examples from um, where the news broke and where it was published. Like I I don't remember if it was the New York Times, Washington Post, or something, just some headline examples. So it's not things that I read through, but it was more kind of highlights and mostly visuals.
Somebody has a question in chat. This one I can answer this one because I experienced it. Did you provide printed binders with everything for the panel presentation? And she writes, I have a Gantt chart that's a bit large and won't fit in the visual, and printing it would be either many pages or small, too small of a font to read. I will just tell you, because I had, for example, for the census, I had a research document that was 300 pages long. So I took all my research, all my planning, all of our communication plans, budgets, the ones I could find, because I didn't take all that stuff when I left my job. Which is a good point. If you're planning to leave your job, take that, and you think someday you might get an APR, take that stuff with you. I put it all in this big PDF that was in addition to my my PowerPoint, and they never asked for it and I never shared it. So that's one thought right there. There was another question in chat that I wanted to, is the questionnaire meant to be a summary or to contain everything intended to cover in the panel presentation? I think we maybe talked about that, or is there anything to add, April?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so, and this is like an old adage of any presentation, like you're the feature, not the PowerPoint, not anything else. Like you are there to show off your knowledge. And to the point that was just made, about a 300-page document, like if you are going over these 10 things, you're being evaluated. I know we sometimes think having more is more. Literally, these are the criteria. So giving people lots of things to look through and to catch commas in paragraph 5 and to do things, it's probably too much information at that time. But to make sure that you're showing your expertise of planning and RPI, and that you're ready for this APR, I think is the most important thing. And I would not get bogged down in lots of slides and additional documents.
Okay. All right, good point. So speaking of the panel presentation, I think my next slide here is actually going to go into this. This is a template for the panel
Okay.
presentation that you'll do in this class. Now you can adjust it for your real panel presentation. The structure of it is really good. You might want to dress it up a little bit and add some color and design to it, but it gives you an idea of how all of this is formatted. So I'm going to turn this over to April and Tammy. They're going to walk through some of these slides. And I will we'll have questions after as we go through them. So I don't know who wants to kick it off first, but whoever is ready, we'll start with the first slide here.
I can go ahead. So just, the basic summary, your name, your organization, just laying it out. Like we said, they're going to have your questionnaire. So they're going to have a lot of this information. This is just the intro slide. So, your pro photo on there would be good. If you have something, you can dress it up. You don't need to though. So next slide. So here's the situation. The setting the scene really and setting where you were in the scene is really what the panelists are looking for. How you were involved, who you were working for, what the circumstance and the problem was. So kind of evaluate or setting kind of a scenario for them. Again, they'll have background, but they're looking for more personal, your kind of flavor, what you added to the situation and how you were involved. So.
Mhm. And I'm happy to tackle this one, Tammy. And you've been in this class for a while and you're seeing people present these. So this is exactly what you're doing. You're starting out with RPI, which we are studying right now, and getting into your research. I would reiterate, I think I did a synopsis of my research, you don't have to pull out everything, but you're obviously trying to show a mastery level knowledge of research, that you know how to do it, and that you did it for your presentation. So yeah, I would think to do an overview here of 1 to 2 slides to be able to do that should hit the mark. I will also say during this entire first part, you're in the presentation mode of you have rehearsed this. They're not talking, you're talking. So definitely rehearsing your inflection points, what you want to emphasize, timing yourself beforehand, all of those things, because you're talking for a while before you're done and they intervene and start asking questions. So to make sure that you really know your stuff and you're hitting that you do know your stuff.
I'll add here with research. So I had done that scenario with the vaping, the boy with the lung transplant, the PR campaign way before I had done any of my APR preparation. So I had done very little research in that not measurable, not audience, not, any of the things basically. So what I did in that scenario was, had I had the knowledge that I have now as an APR candidate, after studying all of this process, this looking back is what I would have done. And I was honest with them. I didn't do this, but this is what would have helped this campaign be more effective. So there were some things that we did, just basically, just things that you do as a PR practitioner that I was able to kind of label with the process, but most of it was this is what I would have done. So. I'll take problem statement. Trying to, you're kind of presenting to your panel, what were you trying to accomplish? What was the what was the big focus of your program? What were you trying to do? In my situation with the transplant and the vaping, it was during a time where there were people that were getting sick from vaping. Looking back later, there were some chemicals that they believe were added to vaping products during that time, because there was a bell curve of people who were sick and died, sick and or died from vaping. And so what we were trying to do was educate people about vaping and trying to get them to stop. So um, I measured, and we didn't really do any, I didn't do any measuring at the time of the PR campaign. But looking back, I was able to pull um, some of the use data that the federal government had put together and use that as, and we did see after we had done our campaign and the federal government had done some campaigning because of the deaths and the people who had been ill from vaping, and we were able to I was able to show in my presentation where there was an effect by a combined combined effort and PR campaign from multiple angles. So, but starting with this problem statement, that kind of sets the scene.
We just did some questions on goals. So wanting to list out clearly what's the broad statement of the end of result that you want to achieve as it says here. I know we're getting ready to get into objectives, but being able to know the difference and being able when you not to get to the next slide yet, but that your objectives can help you reach your goal is important. And then just to tie this all together as you're doing this continuous presentation, especially as you get into the opportunity statement or the challenge, to be able to show how your research led you to here. So you're weaving together a perfect story. And obviously your goal should result from the thing that you've already said, and you're building up to what you did about it.
I think when you look at audiences, I personally think that this is one of the easier parts of your presentation. I think most PR campaigns, you know your audience, and you know from your goals and from your objectives and from your the strategies that you're using, you know who your publics are and groups that you're going to focus on. So being like the slide says, be specific and explain why and what the benefit would be. So
And those objectives, this is probably one of the things that hangs up the most people, just being able to really go through what an objective is and making sure that they are smart objectives. And again, that they line up with your goal, that your objectives are specific, that they're measurable, that they're attainable, that they're relative and they're timely. And really going through that in your questionnaire and in your presentation to make sure that they are all of those things, because these are probably the questions that I've seen the most in panel presentations about these objectives, because literally whatever you're trying to do hangs on this. It's your evaluation, it's how you can do it, is it actually, can it be done? All of these things. I would spend a lot of time here making sure that these are right.
so strategies. So those are the overarching the overarching I want to start to say objectives. It's the overarching thought of what you want to accomplish. So it doesn't have the specifics that other things do, but it sets the stage for everything else. So partner with victims of crime to share their stories, engage managers as leaders to promote the process, use social media to test effective. Oh, wait, you know what? I screwed that up. These strategies are specific, the steps that you're going to take. So, I'm getting confused now too. So that's where you really have to be on it to make sure you're meeting what your PR plan needs to accomplish. So
Okay.
partner with victims of the crime to share their stories. See, these are the actual steps that you're going to take. So these are your day-to-day kinds of things that will float your PR campaign.
I'll jump in really quick on it. Using the middle one, engage managers as leaders to promote the process. So your strategies follow from your tactics. So engage managers as leaders to promote the process. That is kind of there, but so under it, there's all different ways that you can engage managers as leaders. So you could do newsletters, you could do town halls, there's different tactics that follow from it. So think of your strategies as how you're going to how you're going to meet your objectives through what would follow is your tactics. And then speaking of, tactics will be coming in just a moment, but messaging.
And yeah, I know we're getting ready to run out of time. I would just say, in your study guide, it has really great guidance on all of this, but definitely what your messaging looks like. I like to align my messaging with each audience because it could be different depending on who you're talking to. But yeah, messaging is messaging.
And then tactics. And tactics are just those actions. So anything from, sending a press release, creating a video, having town halls, doing blog posts, any of those things can be tactics. There's so many different types of tactics out there. And then costs and budget.
Just having an understanding of what the budget is, walking through it. I don't think this is something, of course, you need to know what a budget is. I don't think it's something that people are like doing deep dives in. We're not accountants, but just being able to understand what it takes to run a campaign from nuts to bolts, I think is important to demonstrate that knowledge.
Timetable and task list.
So
So
that's the planning. Go ahead.
No, jump in.
That's really what helps keep you organized and to show what you've planned out and that you had kind of a cadence of all of these things helps show your panelist and helps you organize.
This is an important one.
Yeah, those SMART objectives, now they're back again. So now we need to understand how we measured them. And you'll know they're smart because you can measure them. So making sure that if there's a percentage of growth that you want to have, if you want to do it by 6 months, can you decisively say, yes, I did this, or no, I didn't do that? I think is the thing about objectives.
And then we just had a little discussion. I know we're running a little bit over here. So
One of the things,
yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
add one thing?
Mhm.
So when I took my test, I wrote out as soon as I walked in. So I did my test at a testing center. I think you do them at home now. But the first thing I did was you're allowed to have a small piece of paper. You were, so I would check this. Oh, you're not allowed anymore. Okay, because I kind of remembered everything and wrote out SMART. I wrote out RPI. I wrote out all of the basics. So I had it right in front of me. So if I got stuck on a question, I could go through everything. So you're not allowed to have pen, pencil, anything?
No, so they changed it. We actually had this conversation last week in this class. So they got rid of the paper, the physical paper, and there's
Yeah.
supposed to be a whiteboard or some sort within the testing platform. But somebody who was here last week said she took the test twice and she couldn't find it. So that's
Oh,
something that, yeah, so I don't know. So that's something to for those who are, when you are getting to that point where you're getting ready, that's something to look into further, like where do you find that whiteboard? So, But anyway, as we're wrapping up here, just as a reminder, we're moving into module 7 next week. We're talking about crisis communications. I'm back next week, so we will dive into that, getting out of RPI a little bit. And I just want to thank our facilitators, April, Tammy, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you to our questions readers, Sue, Victor, Marcus, and Jillian. Thank you for reading the question. And just a reminder, keep working on it. You know, RPI is important, of course. Next week, we're moving into a different KSA, crisis communications, but keep working on things, keep doing all of the modules, the activities, read the materials, and we will see you next week. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Good luck with everything. You can do it. Bye, April. Nice to meet you.